Peter Gray from the AU Review in Australia. Hello, Radha, Jesse, and Lyndon. Congratulations on the show. I wanted to ask, like, because the series sort of highlights that, like, the point of history and culture in Australia, where, like, how did each of you immerse yourself in sort of like the 1970s setting, and was there anything that you learned about the era that surprised you?
Gosh, I think we all came from like completely different places. Because
Yeah.
I mean, all the characters in the show are all coming from different places at the beginning, and so I think. But I mean, for my character, I sort of immersed myself into family man, a union leader, fighting for workers' rights, and then tension within our family, with his wife who's crossed the picket lines, working for the company that they're fighting, and teenage daughters who are, you know, had great dreams and aspirations and sometimes playing up. And I think everyone has a different, you know, thing going on, which makes it such a great piece.
I mean, we all came out of the 70s, I think. Jesse came out of 1979. I'm not giving that away. It's been said earlier today. So he just made it in. But returning was like, it felt like it was. And I had been very nostalgic, I think, about Australia in the 1970s, having lived in Los Angeles for a long time, and just the pace of that time, and the kind of relaxed vibe about that time, the sanity of that time, in you know, in contrast to the insanity of the things that were also happening at that time. Felt very familiar, and I felt like we kind of captured that. And what helped was, you know, the costumes and the gaudy kind of fashion, and all the details that were in the sets were really gave us a sense of place.
And for you, Lyndon, like, I first of all want to say Blue Bayou was incredible. So
thank you.
And how did you find sort of the 1970s as like the setting, and like how was your sort of like personal connection into that story being told? Like, how did you find that through line?
Well, the set and the costumes really helped, you know, to get into the era. But in terms of the character of what Sandy is going through, you know, it allowed me to open a conversation with some of my relatives, actually, who got out of Vietnam at that time. So it was quite personal to me, and quite moving, because it was something that they never talked about before, really. You know, it was kind of a trauma that they kept for themselves. And you know, this was a good door to get into the character. So I kind of reconnected with my family through this show. So it was quite personal.
It's always nice when sort of film or television can open those sort of conversations up. And I wanted to say, Radha, "You're a shit shot" has kind of stayed with me as a line delivery.
I'll have to tell David Toohey, the writer. But yeah. You can imagine in front of the mirror, like practicing that. You're a shit shot.
Well, yeah, I like watching the show. I was like, that was just. I mean, it also had to do with like the swagger of everything there, but that was great. But I wanted to ask, like, the characters of Judy and Tony, like, there's an interesting dynamic there, because obviously, like, professionally they're at odds with one another, and like, was that sort of part of the appeal for both of you, sort of exploring that relationship, and something that kind of still resonates today? Because I found that so much of this show it felt incredibly modern. Like, was that something that you sort of noticed when you were reading the script and seeing these relationships play out?
Yeah.
I mean, you think about historical kind of characters or times in the past that there was some sort of difference in the people, but we've all been the same, I think, all along. You know, costumes have changed, but it's been the same sorts of issues, or the same internal issues, I think, a lot of the time. If you're talking about the sort of gender gender parity, or things changing on the home front, I guess that is an issue that, you know, plays out in different ways in families to today. And this, you know, freedom for women to be in the workforce was certainly, you know, a conversation. You can imagine Cleo magazine, like, back in the 70s, and like, you know, how we've got to where we came from is really interesting to reflect. And even just listening to you speaking about how the story opened up personal things from the past, it's interesting to look backwards to how we got to where we are. And for me, I was looking a lot at my grandmother and her kind of journey into politics, I guess, in the late 70s, early 80s, and what she had to confront in terms of the opposition from the men and how she kind of sort of charmed her way through things. Was interesting. It was interesting. She had given me a book called The Women's Power Handbook, which I'd never read until we started shooting this show. And I was like, oh, wow.
That's the perfect book for your character.
It makes sense for Judy to read this. Like Judy's like so hesitant about, every step she's taking, but I think in the end she kind of finds her stride.
And like with the career counselor sort of at the beginning of the show sort of talks about, what we sort of think children should, where they should go with their career. And I was sort of wondering, like, there's nostalgia and future optimism is sort of very much whirling around this story. And I was like, was there any sense of reflection for the three of you as to looking back and going like, was this the path that I thought I was going to go on? Like, did your career counselor sort of say, you're all going to be actors?
I hope they don't.
My agent said, don't do it. I remember that. I was advised not to do it.
That's not bad advice though sometimes, because if someone tells you don't do it, yet you do it anyway and you have to do it, it's almost a test. So it's not a bad thing to tell someone not to do something, I think sometimes. But it's a good dynamic we have in this show with playing. We're sort of playing traditional roles. We have a family man and we have a homemaker and children who have great dreams and aspirations. And it's how do you keep all those balls in the air as things change, as they inevitably do. And I think that's the attraction of this show, with the different characters all going through their ebb and flow of challenges and transforming through those.
And doing that together, I guess, in relationship to each other. And well, there's different ways to talk about it, but certainly, for our characters, it was difficult to kind of both grow at the same time.
And you're all sort of, there's obviously international productions of things that you've all been involved with, but is there like a conscious effort when it comes to Australian productions? Like, and also with Lindam, like how did this sort of come about for you? Is there a way of sort of being like, I'm going to purposely choose certain projects, or do you always sort of have an idea of like, I want to return home at some point with my work?
Well, I don't have a strategy for my career. It's very instinctive. I read something and I like it, or I'm scared and I'm thinking, okay, if you're scared, you should do it. It's more like it's about that. The way I got into this project is just, through my American agent. And they were actually scared. They thought I was not going to do it because they said, you've got to go 4 months to Australia. And I'm like, bring it on. Jessie, are you going to? Oh my God. And I loved it. And I thought, oh, wow, it's going to be summer. And I get here and it's winter. I can see all the way around. But no, it's all about instinct. And I really, the script was so amazing. And the female character is so powerful. And the drive that Sandy has, even though she's quiet, but she's determined. She has the faith, that was
and for you. And for you, Radha and Jessie, like returning home, is this sort of the way that you look at it?
I think I've come to that point in my life. I think
I've been looking for years to try and do something, an event. It's hard. I mean I was in network TV, so it was difficult to actually just schedule something at the right time to come back. But but I think I'm like Linda. I think I feel quite instinctual about it. I read something and when I read this, it felt there was a lot of nostalgia that you were talking about. It felt very familiar, yet there were great themes running through it with the characters and lots to play with. You're for an actor and a great ensemble cast that had great arcs for the characters, and that's what you look for. It's lots of things to play with.
And we have a great industry here. Like, I feel like there's very interesting stories that are being told in Australia, and it's great to sort of speak with the Australian voice. And things can be more specific, more emotional, I think, coming from here. Things that are made often in the US have this kind of very broad perspective of who they want to communicate to. And in the end, there's like no story left. So I feel like a lot of the stories that come out of Australia are very, they're either driven by the directors, or there's just a real sense of intimacy about them.
Yeah, because I'm finding since COVID, like I sort of found like the Australian productions seem to be really, really thriving more so. And I feel like we're now seeing, you know, international audiences really take on our stories. Like it's sort of crazy to be like Kath and Kim and Fisk and now these big things over there. And
so we have a secret agenda. We're trying to turn the world Australian, mate.
I think it'll work.
Kind of cultural imperialism that we have in mind.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's awesome that like Australian stories are resonating with like American audiences specifically, because it's like for so long there was always that like gap of like, will they get our humor? Like our accents are so, you know, otherworldly to them. It was like, do you know of people that have seen this show in America, that how they've reacted to it, or are you still sort of waiting because not too many people are allowed to talk about it yet?
I know who's seen it in America is Jesse.
Right. And you'd like it.
I think it's more and more, people are very much more aware of, I guess, you know, Australian culture and things than when you first went there 20 years ago. There's much more familiarity. I mean, people even pick my accent pretty well now. They used to think I was from London, but now they very definitely know I'm Australian.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot more familiarity than there used to be, and it's still a lot of interest in this country. So a show like this, I think they have the universal themes that everybody can relate to, but it's going to be a little bit quirky and a little bit weird.
Yeah.
And maybe a little bit exotic, which I kind of like. It's a different time and a different place.
And a weird accent.
And hopefully it resonates.
And just quickly before I go, this will, like, if it's something that can come off the top of your head, but I was like, I love that Xanadu gets a good little shout out here. And I'm wondering, I love that you were like, I mean, it happens in like a horrible scene, but how you say like, oh, this song is now ruined for me. And I was wondering, is there a song for you, the three of you, that you're just like, I can't deal with this song anymore?
Oh.
Turn around.
I'll just karaoke.
No, we are not friends anymore. We are not friends.
Can I just put a more positive spin on it? I really love the song "Staying Alive," the Bee Gees, and I don't know if that was actually 1979, but it was sort of around then. And yeah, that's a song that I can just never hear enough of for some reason.
Okay. Yeah, that's a nice way to put a spin on it. And I watched Xanadu like 6 weeks ago, and I was like, oh my god, this song is now back, but it's great. But no, I'm so excited that this show is going beyond Australia, because I just think, you know, we tell such amazing stories and we have such great actors and filmmakers and writers, and I think we all need to be out there in the world. So again, thank you so much for taking the time out. Enjoy the rest of your junket, and yeah, thank you again so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Cheers.